let's take a look at some practice questions from past science Olympiad exams with the topic of glaciers for a dynamic planet. So the first question, which of the following contributes to the most H2O or water to glaciers? This is going to be snow, and this is because we know that glaciers form from snow and it goes to granular ice, and then firn, and then compaction, which brings it to glacier, so we know it's snow. Rain is a form of precipitation, and then ocean water and human just does not make sense, so the answer is B. What form of ice has the greatest density? The answer is B right away, because we know that snow becomes granular ice, and then granular ice becomes firn in the process of glacial formation, and then after around maybe 3 to 5 years or even a decade, the firn becomes more dense, eventually into glacial ice. So the answer is B. And we know that as glaciers form, the density increases, right? So therefore, our answer should be the final product, which is going to be B, glacial ice. The third question, partially compacted snow that is an intermediate between snow and ice is called A. The answer is going to be A, firn. We can also use processes of elimination for this question. So for answer choices B and E, these are both depositional glacial features. So drumlin and moraines are not partially compacted snow, and with C and D, those are definitely not features that describe snow. So therefore, the answer is A. This is a question that basically just tests you on definitions, and you should be able to get this right away. Why is glacial ice analogous to a metamorphic rock? Okay, so metamorphic rocks arise from the transformation of existing rock to new types of rocks in a pressure called metamorphism. So now glacial ice is similar because they all involve the process of transforming existing matter to form a different type of quote-unquote rock. So the answer here is A, and I think the main giveaway is the word pressure, since both metamorphic rocks and glaciers undergo pressure. With glacier, you need the pressure in order for the firn or the granular ice to form into firn and the firn to form into glacial ice. So the answer is A. So glacial ice is, and then we have 5 answer choices, so let's look them through. So the first one says annually formed high altitude. So the first we notice it says annually. So now glacial ice does not need to be annually formed because it is highly variable depending on the snow amounts and the precipitation amounts. So A is not the answer. Glacial ice is produced over a period of many years. This seems to be the right answer because this is generally true. C is not correct. D, no. E, no, because the glacial ice is definitely more dense than snow and firn, because we know, again, as snow changes from snow to firn to glacial ice, it becomes more dense. So the answer is going to be B. So firn is formed as a result of, again, let's look at the answer choices, the polishing of bedrock by the scraping action of glacial ice, the changes in the flow rate. So C says the partial melting. Yeah, okay. So the answer is C. So let's take a look. So A says the polishing of bedrock by scraping action. This is not firn, since we know that the definition of firn is basically the snow, the form of snow after the process of forming into granular ice and before changing into glacial ice. So we know the answer is C, because C describes the partial melting and refreezing of snow crystal into small grains of ice. This is the definition of firn. Yeah. The source of glacial ice this is going to be B. It's because glacial ice, again, it forms from snow into firn into glacial ice. This is just another definition question. So now let's look at some glacial mass balance questions. So, okay, which term refers to large pieces of ice breaking off from the coastal glacier to form icebergs? This is going to be C, calving. So this is, again, a definition question. You don't need to know all the definitions of the answer choices to answer this. Just to know that calving is basically when large pieces of ice break off at the end or the terminal part of a glacier. And then usually these large pieces eventually form icebergs. So this is a definition you should probably know. So where does most glacial ice originate? The answer of this, let's take a look. So A, moraines. This is false because moraine is a definite depositional feature. So this is not the answer. Snowline. Snowline is basically the ELA, or the equilibrium line of a glacier, and it's not true either because B, or snow line, basically describes the area where the accumulation rate equals to the ablation rate. So this is not correct. C is not correct. D, zone of accumulation, is correct. And because we need the zone of accumulation in order for the snow to be accumulated and perhaps being turned to glacial ice, so therefore D is the right answer, and then E is just not right. Okay, fill in the blank. What refers to all processes involving loss of snow, ice, or water from a glacier? Ablation. Yeah, ablation is the answer. And for these type of questions, there would usually be a word bank, but even without your word bank, you would probably know it's ablation, since remember the all processes involving the loss of something, which involves like melting, evaporation, or geothermal heat, or even calving. This is all loss of matter from like the glacier, and this is ablation. And do you remember the opposite? The opposite is accumulation. So the answer to this is ablation. The last one, the boundary between the accumulation zone and the ablation zone is known as the definition question. This is going to be the ELA, or it stands for equilibrium line. Again, if this was a word bank question and they had snow line, I think you can also put snow line. Okay, the process of calving produces what? So again, definition questions, the answer is E. If you don't know this, I guess you can also use the process of elimination. So for A, it says moraines. Moraines, again, a depositional glacial feature. So that's not true. Ice sheets are areas that are more than 50,000 square kilometers, and therefore it's not the answer. C, we don't really need to know what that is in order to answer the question. D, nunataks, they're basically like summits or like mountains that are surrounded by glaciers, but like they protrude out. Again, it's not the answer. So I think for this, it's just easier to memorize the definition and just know that calving may produce icebergs. So the answer is E. So the zone where accumulation balances ablation is known as the. So this one we would choose A, and I know that C, snowline, is similar to A, but the best choice here would be A, because equilibrium line is usually very associated with accumulation and ablation zones, and so the answer is A. But if we take a look at the other choices, like B, cirque is a type of alpine glaciers, is not the answer. Crevices is like a crack within the glacier, and it's just not the answer. Medial moraine is a type of depositional feature, or like a type of moraine. So yeah, the answer is A. So if a glacier has a positive mass balance, it would be expected to. Okay, so positive mass balance means that there's the greater accumulation rate compared to the ablation rate. So it's going to be advancing. The answer is A. So what is ice calving? Ice calving is defined as what? Again, B. B is the answer. The breaking of ice chunks from the edge of a glacier. What term refers to glacial melting below the snow line? Okay, so below the snow line. This means that something is losing. So if you take a look at the answer choices, ablation would be the best answer because it says glacial melting, and we know that glacial melting is like something that causes the loss of a glacier, which ablation is the best answer. Calving, C, is also refers to like a process that makes the glacier lose itself, but calving, remember, is the process of breaking ice, breaking the ends of the glacier, and usually forms icebergs. So C is not the answer here, so the answer is A.